Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be with you, even in this disembodied, pre-recorded format. And I want to thank Bonnie and whoever else was responsible for inviting me. And I hope one day to be with you in person. I always enjoy being at Unity facilities, and I hope we can arrange that. When I was told that your theme this month is love, I started thinking about what I could say about a mystery that great minds have contemplated ever since, the first teenager had a crush on the boy or girl in the next cave. It's a huge and complex topic. So I turned to my files of quotes, and I found a couple that I'd like to start off with. One is from the great philosopher Ringo Starr. Ringo once said, quote, "Love is an incredible power. If you give out love, the reaction to it is so great, even like crazy, violent people, they stop for a minute because everybody notices love when it's coming your way. And you feel incredible when you give love back." That's a nice sort of operational description, and I don't think anybody would argue with it. Now let's turn to a more serious philosopher, Jiddu Krishnamurti, who got a little bit more abstract than Ringo. And I'm skipping around in a very long passage. "If you pass on through the meadows with their 1,000 flowers of every color imaginable, without a single movement of the machinery of thought, then you will know what love is. When the mind is completely quiet, silent, and undisturbed by any thought, then there is unity, in which the division between you and another ceases. This state, without the word, without thought, is the expanse of mind that has no boundaries, no frontiers within which the I and the not I can exist. The look of love is different from the look of thought. Life begins where thought ends." There's a lot in that to contemplate. So first, we have a practical statement about the transformational power of love from Ringo. Then we have a clue to one of the great mysteries about love, namely, how can we access it more fully? Not just in its everyday, I love you sense, but in its purest, highest, deepest, most fulfilling form. How can we enhance our capacity to give love and receive love? The quote from Krishnamurti suggests that there are states of being, inner conditions, principally a quiet mind. I would add an open heart, where love arises, and other states where it does not, or it's limited and constricted. And that's our experience, isn't it? Aren't there times when you sort of gush with love, when you feel consumed by love, when love just arises spontaneously and unforced, and you don't have to do anything to make it happen. It just overtakes you. And other times when you're blocked, closed, indifferent, self-absorbed, irritated, that love seems as far away and as unapproachable as another planet. We attribute these differences in our experience of love to circumstances, or to the environment, or to the behavior of the people we love or don't love at any moment. But what's the reality? Think about your experience. If you're a parent, you obviously love your children. But the truth is, there are times when your heart is full and everything your child does is precious, and your heart swells. And other times, when you're in a rotten mood, or you haven't slept well, or something upsets you at work, when the exact same behavior by the same child annoys you, you don't feel that upsurge of love. You just get irritated. Isn't that true? It's the same with our spouse, or our friends, or our neighbors, or the world at large. We experience them differently, and therefore we love differently at different times. Excuse me. I used to live in Los Angeles, and I was lucky enough to be 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes, depending on traffic, from the beach. And I would take walks. And I realized after a while that there were days when I would walk on that beach and I'd look out at the ocean and the tide, and I'd feel the sand under my feet, and I'd see the hills in the distance and the sky, feel the sun, and it would be sublime. I would be ecstatic. I'd swell up in gratitude that I had this opportunity to do something that, people save all their money to just get a glimpse of the Pacific Ocean. There was a sense of oneness and beauty that was indescribable. But there were other times I'd be walking on that same beach with the same views and the same sunlight, and I might as well have been on a treadmill in a gym in some dingy basement somewhere, because my consciousness, my mind, my inner state was such that I had no appreciation. I had no love. It didn't happen. Early in my spiritual path, I heard a teacher say something he said was from the Vedas. I've never found it. I've never learned exactly where it came from. Possibly it was a loose translation of something. But it contains a vital insight. The saying is, knowledge is different in different states of consciousness. Our consciousness, meaning how we perceive, how clear our mind is, how deep our awareness is, how much we feel, how acutely and how accurately we take in information, varies It changes. How well we know something, how deeply we apprehend something, depends on the state that we're in. Well, the same is true of love. Same is true of everything. You could say reality is different in different states of consciousness. And certainly love is different in different states of consciousness or different states of being. Again, we usually focus outside of ourselves to the people whose love we want, or to the conditions of our lives, or to God. But maybe we're the key variable. Maybe it's our inner state that determines how well we love and how much we are loved. Some of us who are deeply spiritual and committed to a spiritual life also look to God for love. We want the embrace of the supreme, however we conceive of it or define it. In some religious circles, we hear people say, God loves you, as if God were a personality who loves some people more than others, or loves us sometimes, but not so much at other times. I think the more accurate statement, also a common one, is God is love. We've all heard that many, many times. Ringo even said it in that same interview I quoted from. What does that tell us? Well, for one thing, if God is love, then God doesn't love the way human beings love, in limited and capricious and selfish ways. No, God is love. And because God is everything and everywhere, and there's nowhere that God is not, love must also be everywhere at all times. There's nowhere that love is not, and never a moment in time when love is not present. If God's within us at the very core of our being, love must also be within us, fully, completely, always. Which begs the question, if that's the case, why don't we feel love all the time? Why aren't we always embraced in divine love and feel it? Why can't we do as Ringo suggests and just give out our love easily, automatically, everywhere without effort? Well, by way of analogy, oxygen is pretty much everywhere too, but sometimes it's hard to breathe. And light may be available most of the time, but we can't access it when the source of light is veiled by walls or ceilings or shades or clouds. Same with love. It's omnipresent. It's built into the fabric of the universe. It's in us. It's always available. But we're like sailboats at sea. We need the wind. And the wind is blowing all around us. But if we don't set our sails properly, we can't receive and harness and utilize what's there for the taking. Same with love. Well, notice you can't just will ourselves to feel love or to give out love. We can't coerce love to happen. We can't seize it or grab it like a prize. We can't make it happen. We can have the intent and we can give it the opportunities. But for the most part, love just happens. It's spontaneous. It arises. It overtakes us. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. So we have to set our sails. We have to make ourselves receptive to love. And by that, I don't mean waiting to receive it from other people or from God, but to open our hearts and free up the love that's already inside of us. Because if God is love and God is within us, then so is love. And what the sages always said about the divine is also true of love. It's nearer than our breath. And that love that dwells within us at our core in great abundance, in limitless capacity, which we can access and give away freely. That love is far more satisfying, far more fulfilling, far more liberating than merely being loved by another person, however precious that may be. One day, a number of years ago, I learned a very important lesson related to that. I had been divorced and alone for 3 years. And then I met the woman I would later marry, and to whom I'm still married. And one day early in our relationship, when, early love was in bloom, a friend saw us together, and he was moved by Lori, that's her name, Lori's affection. And he said to me, "It must feel good to be loved again." And I said, without even thinking about it, it just came out, "Yeah, that's great. But what's really great is feeling free to love again." I didn't fully appreciate what I'd said until much later on. But I had essentially closed my heart. I had bottled up my love in self-defense after my divorce. And at one point, it just became unlocked. I didn't intentionally do it. There was a part of me that was willing to let that happen. That felt safe enough, I guess, to let it happen. My defenses disappeared. And I experienced a natural upsurge of love from inside that was effortless to give away. And it was blissfully satisfying. As Ringo said, you feel incredible when you give love back. That's just a small example of the truth that it's an inside job. Yes, the presence of a deserving person, of somebody, who karmically resonated with me to the point where I could do that, that was, of course, important. And our circumstances matter, and the people we associate with all matter. But the truth is, if you want love, and we all do, starts by giving it. And to give love, we have to learn to access the love that's already there inside of us and open up to it and create the right conditions for that love to come out. And when it doesn't come out easily, as happens to the best of us, we have to remember to go back and open the door again and reestablish the conditions to access that love. And the key to that is the same as everything else that concerns us on the spiritual path. It's the same as the punchline to the old joke. You've probably heard it. Tourist is in New York, and he says to someone on the street, "How do I get to Carnegie Hall?" And the answer is practice, practice, practice. We are blessed in this era of high tech to have access to a vast repertoire of spiritual practices from the wisdom traditions. Purification practices like the yogis do, even simple physical and breathing practices, and chanting and prayer, and especially deep meditation. When these are done on a regular basis, they remove the obstacles to the divine love and light within us. They open the door to what I call a sanctuary of peace and contentment inside of us. They enlarge the container of the heart. They quiet the mind. So as Krishnamurti said, life begins and the divisions between us and others disappears. And that's the key. When we're at peace inside, when we're content and happy, that's when we love the best. That's when we appreciate. That's when we're grateful. That's when we can see beauty and goodness. That's when we feel safe. That's when we don't need anything from outside of us to feel better because we're already at peace. We're already content. And as a result, love can flow from us without effort. And we're most open to receiving it deeply and profoundly. There are many reasons to have a regular spiritual practice and an inventory of practices to draw upon. And one of them is to enhance the capacity to love and be loved. So in addition to establishing a regular spiritual practice that you will do daily, here's a couple of suggestions. One, make loving more and better your sankalpa. That's a Sanskrit word for intent or resolve. Two, at appropriate times when you're with other people and so forth, especially if there's tension, ask yourself quietly, internally, am I coming from love at this moment? Am I in touch with the love in my heart, or is it being obliterated? And remember that intent to love more and better. See what happens. And here's a third. You're always, most of you are aware of the Indian expression of greeting and farewell, namaste. I go to India a lot. I lead tours there. And one of the charming things is seeing people say namaste, just as an everyday greeting, this humble, beautiful thing. As you know, it means the divine in me recognizes, honors the divine in you. See if you can do that. I don't mean go around saying namaste with your hands like this to everybody, but think it. When you're out, when you're with other people, just greet them mentally with namaste. Remind yourself that you're a divine being, and so are they. And you're connected in that divinity. See what happens. And if you remember anything from my little talk today, let it be what Ringo and his bandmates once said: the love you take is equal to the love you make. It's inside you. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Namaste.